The stare down. They could be a time of great tension. One of the rare moments when a fighter gets the opportunity to look their opponent right in the eye, to see past all of the bravado and whatever front they may be putting on. They could also be totally hilarious, as these athletes either slip up while trying to be serious or do whatever possible to break up the suspense. These are the 10 funniest UFC stare downs caught on live TV. Johnny Walker. Sure, his hype has died down pretty considerably these days, but when Johnny Walker was making his initial climb to the top of the light heavyweight division, the dude was getting quite popular. His first few outings in the UFC saw him finish several very strong opponents like it was nothing, using spinning kicks, hook kicks, and explosive movements to get his foes out of there. But what really tied it all together was Walker's personality, the magnetism that he showed each and every time he stepped in front of the camera. It was the thing that made most fans still wish him well in his career, even when the losses began to pile up. At UFC 244, the first bump in the road for the rising contender came in the form of a knockout loss to Corey Anderson, but it wasn't the only slip up for Johnny Walker that week. During the pre-fight stare-downs at the event's media day, Walker stumbled and dropped his phone as he took to the stage, drawing a huge laugh from those in the audience. Immediately recovering from this mishap, the 205-pounder took a selfie and then proceeded to play it off in the most Johnny Walker way possible, making all kinds of weird faces. Win, lose, or draw, this electric light heavyweight contender is one of a kind, that is for sure.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Looks like Johnny Walker had a little bit of a misstep there.
Ian McCall. Ian McCall, or Uncle Creepy as he's known, certainly has the personality to back up his famous nickname. His later days in the sport were notable for his incredible streak of bad luck with injuries, illnesses, and matchups, but during his prime, he was certainly one of the best flyweights on the planet. In his final UFC bout, McCall would be paired up with the hard-hitting powerhouse John Lineker in a fight that should have taken place at flyweight. However, Lineker missed weight a whopping 5 pounds, leaving the contest at a catchweight. Angered by this, McCall went to the official weigh-ins and made a point of standing in front of the clearly dehydrated Lineker, drinking from his bottle while looking at him, fully aware that his opponent was still cutting ahead of one last attempt to make the 125-pound limit. He, of course, failed, but still managed to beat McCall in the fight, earning a unanimous decision victory. From there, McCall had one of the oddest runs possible. He was booked for 6 UFC fights, all of which fell apart, 4 during the week due to injuries, illness, opponent withdrawals, and more. To make matters worse, when McCall finally did get a fight in his new promotion, Ryzen, he lost under 2 minutes after suffering a cut on the ring ropes. You seriously couldn't script a more unfortunate run. Shane Young. Dana White is certainly a man who has done his fair share of traveling over the years, with a fight promotion that covers the entire globe under his control and a near infinite supply of wealth at his disposal. The UFC president is certainly no stranger to foreign soil. The question of how cultured he is, though, is another thing entirely, and when the New Zealand Shane Young decided to try to intimidate his opponent by doing the haka, it was clear that Dana was caught a little bit off guard. The haka is a Maori dance usually performed by a large group of men involving the collection of chants and stomps. These days, any fans of the All Blacks rugby team will know it as a huge part of their pre-match ritual. For Uncle Dana, however, unless he had paid close attention during his last trip to New Zealand, he likely has no idea what was happening as Young completely ignored his outstretched hand as he immediately began the haka. It was funny, intense, awkward, all of the things that make a great stare-down moment. Quinton Rampage Jackson. John Jones' habit of looking away from his opponents at weigh-ins is seen by many as a way of telling them that he's not bothered by whatever challenge or threat they may present. Supremely confident in his abilities and status as the single greatest fighter on the planet, Jones never gives his foes anything to work with the entire time when it comes to a stare-down. Most of the time, this leaves the resulting face-off looking quite awkward. However, when Jones's 205-pound title defense against Quinton Rampage Jackson came around, the former champ had something up his sleeve. Instead of John's game of looking to his eyes as they avoided his, Rampage turned to the cameras and delivered the corniest smile possible, breaking the tension and leaving us with an iconic and hilarious moment. It's just a shame that the fight didn't go anywhere near as well as the face-off did, with Jones thoroughly dominating Jackson before scoring the rear naked choke finish in the 4th round. Sean O'Connell. How can we forget the great Sean O'Connell, the man who many would consider to be the king of the pre-fight face-off? Known just as much for his weigh-in antics as he is for the fighting successes of his own, the particular weigh-in moment shared with Ilir Latifi perfectly captures just how strange and hilarious a presence he is in the UFC. Faced with the physically imposing Swede that stood before him, O'Connell decided to gift Latifi with a bouquet of flowers, something that, trust us, you will never see at a UFC weigh-in ever again. Thankfully, Latifi took this pretty well, graciously accepting the gift in just 24 hours before knocking him out in 30 seconds inside of the cage. Funny how that works.
All right, exclusively on UFC Fight Pass.
Jon Jones and Anthony Johnson. Jon Jones might be one of the most widely despised people in the sport, but every now and then he does something that you can't help but just get behind. And on one such occasion, Jones was fresh off his incredibly tense rivalry with Daniel Cormier, a pairing that resulted in a shutout victory for the champion at UFC 182. When the promotion moved to set Jon against the hard-hitting Anthony Rumble Johnson, while some gave Rumble a chance based on the power, the general expectation was that Jon was far superior of a fighter. What we didn't expect, however, was that things between Jones and Johnson would kick off in a dramatic fashion, as Jon got a little too close to comfort, causing Rumble to push him. Except things weren't that serious at all, and the two were simply playing a joke on the very nervous Dana White, who took a moment or two to fully grasp that he had just been fooled. An iconic moment, that's for sure. Anderson Silva and Chris Weidman. When Chris Weidman rose to the top of the middleweight pile to challenge the great Anderson Silva, there was a decent chunk of the fan base who thought that his stellar wrestling and improving striking were going to prove to be the perfect stylistic threat to the champ. Hell, there was even a few who believed wholeheartedly that the All-American was going to be the one to finally dethrone him. However, no one expected to see the two middleweight icons practically kissing during their post-weight stare-down. We know that setting a tense mood is what it's all about, but these two got so close that they ended up lip to lip, with Silva standing his ground as Weidman advanced. In the end, it mattered little as Chris Weidman was able to pull off one of the biggest shocks in UFC history, knocking Silva out in the second round to take home the title. Henry Cejudo. You have to give it to Henry Cejudo. Even though a lot of people are quite critical of him because of his incredibly cringy persona, when he commits to a bit, you best believe that he's going all the way. And when it came to his first flyweight title defense against TJ Dillashaw, there really seemed to be a bit of animosity in the air between the two. Dillashaw, of course, plays the heel quite well, building off the fact that the general fan base of the sport sees him as the snake in the grass. But during a media day stare down before their fight, TJ was the only one playing into that meme. Henry Cejudo showed up with a massive fake snake, smacking it off the ground so he could basically tell TJ and the world as a whole what he would do on fight night. Funnily enough, the actual fight kind of played out exactly how Cejudo predicted, with him scoring a shockingly quick finish, TKOing Dillashaw within the opening minute. Phil Davis. This next one has a bit of history involved, with the light heavyweight clash between Wagner Prado and Phil Davis and the unfortunate end of their first matchup. It was back in 2012, and Davis was hoping to get his title hopes back on track after a loss to Rashad Evans by getting a victory over Prado. However, just after 90 seconds of action, the bout was stopped due to an accidental eye poke from Mr. Wonderful, leading to it being declared a no contest. When the rematch came, there didn't seem to be any hard feelings over the eye poke. In fact, things were so cordial and easygoing between the two that Davis actually posed for the stare down, with his fingers totally outstretched, making a joke of his own mistake in their first fight. When fight night came, a second round anaconda choke saw Phil Davis declared the victor. Prado, on the other hand, would only fight in the UFC 3 times, going totally winless. Pat Barry versus Stefan Struve. There are height disparities, and then there's the ridiculous gulf in size that came when Pat Barry and Stefan Struve were matched up in 2011. With 1 foot separating the heavyweight division's smallest member Barry and the 7-foot-tall Struve, you literally could not have found a more dramatic physical difference in all of the sport. What made it pretty hilarious though was Barry, knowing he was about to be outsized, decided to remain on the scales for the stare down, calling Struve over for a more even face-off. When he did step down, the size gap was just as crazy as you might think. In the end, Barry would lose by way of submission in the second round. And that'll just about do it for this video. What's your own personal favorite UFC weigh-in moment of all time? Do let us know in the comment section below. Again, if you enjoyed today's video and want to see more, be sure to leave a like before subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Thank you for watching.